Well, good evening. This is Gina Tudela, and tonight I'm going to show you 3 easy cards to create using DSP and the dry embossing and cut machine. And we're going to be using the corrugated embossing folder. I'm using the sentiment, "You are remarkable in every way," single way, from the "You Are Remarkable" stamp set. And then I'm going to be using the brush brass butterflies as the embellishment, and then some ribbon. So I'm going to show you how easy that is to do. Colors I'm using tonight in cardstock and ink is Mossy Meadow, Early Espresso, and Pecan Pie. And we're using the gallery, the beautiful gallery. DSP is a 6x6. So let's get started. We're also using the beautiful beige cardstock. So first off, you're going to need, let me get my pieces here. Somehow, I'm going to say I lost one of my circles, but I didn't. So this is just a 1.5 strip by 5 of the beautiful gallery DSP. And then I brought in and I used 2 of our circle punches, the 2-inch and the 1 3/4. This is Mossy Meadow and beautiful beige. And then I brought in a piece of Mossy Meadow cardstock, and this is 1 3/4 by 5 1/4. That's for it to be layered. Then I cut out a piece of the beautiful beige cardstock, 4 by 5 1/4, and we're going to emboss this. Hello, Tina. And then we need a basic card piece, and this is 5.5 by 8.5 of the cardstock. So first off, we want to emboss this. I embossed the last 2 so you don't have to have that big machine come back in several times, but I wanted to show how to do that. So this is a corrugated embossing folder. So when you put your cardstock in, we don't want it this way. We want it this way. But you can do it either way. And it's easy, just follow the line. Just make sure that your cardstock is straight. Then you just close that up. And before I bring the platform in, it takes up so much space. You want to use the platform number 1. And then this is a 3D, so you use the gray one, which is number 4. Now, those of you that have the old Big Shot, you would probably use the blue piece. Or you have to use 1 cutting plate with the embossing folder and a paper shim. So just depending. But if you have the new Stampin' Cut Emboss machine, then you'll have that. It's easier to follow. Hello, Linda. So I'm going to bring this big machine in, and you just go ahead and slide it in, and then you roll it. And I was at Julie Gardner's a couple weeks ago, and she goes, "Oh, your machine is so much easier." We were doing the creativity event with Stampin' Up online. And she used my machine, and she said, it slides in so smoothly. I said, yes, it does. So, but this is what it does. Look at that. Those ridges. I have to turn it at a light so you can see it. So, I'll move this back out of the way because we won't need that anymore. It takes so much room. So let me bring in my cut cardstock. The only thing we're stamping is the sentiment tonight, but everything else is the paper. So when you line up your corners, you just line up with the bottom piece to the top piece. And I usually press down in the center. And if you have a bone folder, you just go up and down, which I do. But those who don't, just use your finger and go up and down. Then I flip it over and do it again. That way you get a smooth surface. Now I use the multi-purpose glue, the Tombow multi-purpose glue. It's economical and easy to use. Key factor is you don't want to put too much on there. So I'm just going to do, and I usually say about 1/4 inch away from the edge. And you can go a little bit down the center. This gives you time to get it situated and placed in spot. There we go. So when it's 6x6 paper, you have to be really choosy about how to use it because it only gives you 4 sheets of each type. So I usually cut them in strips or squares or half a sheet and then cut it in a diagonal. That way I get more use for my art. Now on this piece, it doesn't like the dry adhesive. So you can use the Tombow multi-purpose glue or you can use the tear tape. Hi, Bee. So I just go across the ridges. Whoops. Hopefully everybody stayed cool today. And we're going to flip that over. And I'm just centering it. I always like to use an inlay to do my embossing versus using the whole card. Because then you have it on the inside of the card here. And you don't want that. So that's why I usually do an extra layer. And I just smooth that all the way around. Now, we're going to go ahead and stamp our sentiment, and then we'll add ribbon. Okay, because that way this can dry. So this is going to be using the Mossy Meadow. I love the clear stamps because you can always see through them. There we go. Everybody's saying hi to each other. Wonderful. I love that. B says, way too hot for me. I understand. I am blessed to be in a house that has AC. So I totally understand, B. So there is the sentiment. I'll close this ink up. I don't need it. You could sponge around the edge, but since I'm using a layered piece, I'm not going to do that. And we'll go ahead and add the glue on the back of that and let that sit on the circle while the ink is drying. It's not like I'm having to touch any of it. If you are going to want to smooth it out, just turn it over and press on it. Because some people use craft ink too, so. Alright, so now we're going to use some ribbon. And it doesn't matter what type of ribbon you use. I'm using one of the ones that we used to have. This was our old Rogaine. And I'm looking at this. It needs to be like this. Okay. B doesn't like to tie. So I understand her. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut this with my ribbon scissors. And I found out today on the leaders board, when they had the live video from the home office, that the company that used to make our paper snips is no longer in business. So I don't know who they're going to be using. So we'll find that out. Okay, so I usually put tear tape on that to hold it in place. So I tore off a piece of tear tape, and I'm just going to flip both over. I'm going to press on that one, and I'll bring this one in, and then I'll hold both of those in. And if you want a bow, it's easier just to go ahead and tie one and then apply it versus trying to tie a bow when it's wrapping around it. It's so hard. And as we get older, I like to make things a lot easier for people. And it is easier to tie it right there on the ribbon spool. And I usually cut this at an angle. I'll move that out of the way here. And then I'm going to put a small piece of tear tape on the back of that, or you can use glue dots, whichever works best for you. trying to get this loose. uh, press on here. And when you use tear tape, you need to make sure you burnish it. That means rub it real good before you try to peel it up, because sometimes it just doesn't want to work. And then we're going to go ahead and mount that on, and you can do it at an angle. Doesn't have to be straight. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead. I'm not going to peel that off, but I'm going to add my Tombow multi-purpose glue on the back here. And I'm going to place this over towards my left side. I'm going to go all the way to the edge because I want the corrugated to show. But the wet glue gives you movement, and it also adheres to the when it's embossed. Keep in mind your dry adhesive does not like to stick. It'll stick at first, but then it pops up loose. So just remember that. Now on our sentiment, we're going to use some Stampin' Dimensionals. And the larger the circle, I usually use, and since this is going to be raised up, I'm sliding just right in. I'm going to put 1, 2. I'm not going to put one over here on this side. 3. But I am going to put a small piece of tear tape on that side so it sticks. So you want to burnish this. And then on your dimensionals, you just push in a divot in the center, and it helps peel those right up. And then we're going to add some of those beautiful brass brushed butterflies. And what did I do with them? I just had them. Oh, they're right here. That's what happens when you work in a small area. Oh, thank you, Nancy. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and grab that. And if you have take your pick tool, you want to use this end to pick these up because they are self-adhesive. Or you can use your paper snips closed and lift up. Either way. So I'm going to grab one of the larger ones. And press there. And I usually do 3 to 5, depending on what's here. And then I want to put one here on where the sentiment is. And now move that out of the way. And then I want to put one over here. There we go. And I don't know what I did with the lid. Oh, there's the lid. That keeps it from getting you poked. But there is the first one. Isn't that beautiful? So, now let's go to the next second and the third one. Now, I'm not going to show the embossing again, so if you miss that, you'll have to go back and start from the beginning. Because I went ahead and embossed it because that machine is so cumbersome underneath this camera area when it's a small area to work with. So I'll bring that back in at the end. So this is that beautiful gallery DSP. So here's another one. This is the beautiful beige cardstock. This came in May, I think a year ago. And I just haven't used it that much, but I started using it because our DSP coordinates with it. So this is a 5.5 by 8.5. And here's one already corrugated. 4 by 5 1/4. And this is pecan pie. 1 3/4 by 5 1/4. 1.5 by 5. And a 2-inch pecan pie circle. And a 1 3/4 basic beige circle. And we'll be using the pecan pie to stamp the sentiment. I love how our colors coordinate with each other. So first off, we're going to go ahead and fold this in half. Where am I doing my bone folder? I'll put it back up. So just remember to always flip it over so you can smooth it on both sides so it's even. And the next step is we're going to mount this piece that's corrugated on. And I go across. I don't go down, because then it would go down inside the areas and then you won't have the where it will be glued. So remember that. So there's a tip for you. When you're doing corrugated or crimping paper, you want to go across the ridges with the glue. If you use tear tape, you don't have to worry about that. But when you're using wet glue, you do. And dry tape doesn't work except for the tear tape. It usually raises up afterwards. And that's the back side of that. But I like this side. And we want it this way. That's the right side up. Sometimes you have to look at it. As long as you look at it before you mount it on the card, you'll be in great shape. Now we're going to go ahead and mount this just like that. So, now I brought in this beautiful gold ribbon. I don't know, I think it's still in the catalog, but this will go great with it. It's got the gold and the basic beige. And this is easy to tie, B, just to give you a heads up. So this one, I'm going to go ahead and tie it while it's on here. I'm not going to use the tear tape. Just give yourself enough room so you can tie and make a bow. Because I want this one to go up a little bit higher. The other one I had a little bit lower. And as long as you give yourself enough access, the organdy ribbon ties so much easier. And you can manipulate it. As you see I'm doing here now. Trying to get this in. I got glue on my finger and it wants to stick to the ribbon. Oh my gosh. There we go. Get my paper snips out. There's that. Put that back with the... Now, of course, I want to trim off this edge. Just be careful not tie your pretty tie part. So that looks perfect going up there. So now we can go ahead and mount this one. Well, before I do that, we want to stamp the sentiment. That's true. Since I used a darker ink, I want to clean that off a little bit before I bring in the pecan pie. And these are all done the same layout design, just done with different paper, and they just look different. And you could do happy birthday or a thank you. But some of them have to be on rectangles, and I wanted to use a circle sentiment since I was already doing this in a rectangle. Okay, so while that's drying, we'll go ahead and get this mounted on. Okay, let's go ahead and add our wet glue. I ain't going straight, so. But who's going to see that? Nobody. Now, you can mount it to this side, which I think I'll do it on this one this time. So you have a different look. And then we're going to go ahead and put the glue on the back of this sentiment. Make sure it's dry. It is. The good thing about circle sentiments, they're easy to line up on another circle. Okay, so we're going to add our dimensionals to this one. It'll be tear tape here, dimensional here, here, and here. I want to peel those off till I get the tear tape on here. There it is. Just remember to rub it so you can peel it off. Otherwise, if it doesn't want to come up, rub it again. That's what that means. It'll stick though. You saw it just stuck to my hand. I'm going to bring this out just a touch. Make sure I got it straight. There we go. Now we'll bring in these pretty butterflies, and it will coordinate beautifully with that ribbon. So I'm going to add one here. And then one here. This one I'm going to do 5. Because I want it to stand out. One more small one. Because there's more small ones than there are large ones. There we go. And there is that card. Isn't that beautiful? Okay. Now like I said, these are very easy. The only thing that takes time is cutting and prepping. So let's do our last one. And this is with Early Espresso. So this is our basic beige, 5.5 by 8.5. Put it in my bone folder. I moved, oh, there it is. I moved stuff and forget where I put it. But these are quick and beautiful cards. Not taking any time whatsoever. And of course, this piece was already corrugated. That's why I said you could go ahead and cut your stuff and then prepare it on another day. That's why I like to give the measurements so people can do that. There we go. One more line. There we go. Center that. There we go. And then this one's just got brown flowers stamped. This is more like a... And then I had the back side. That was the back side of that. There we go. Beautiful. Love how easy it is. So let's go ahead and bring our sentiment in. Always put the lid on your glue. You don't have to close it, but you want to put the lid on there. And I'm bringing in Early Espresso. Didn't have to worry about cleaning it off because the other one was a lighter color. Early Espresso is the darkest one of the group. There we go. Now I brought in Early Espresso cotton ribbon. We used to have this. Or you can use the gold. It doesn't matter. And then this one, I am just going to make a bow. I'm not going to tie nothing around it. Because since it's narrow enough, you don't have to really worry about that. Just want to show 3 different variations of how you can finish up a card. You don't have to do exactly what I'm doing. That's why I like to show a variation. Because each person creates in their own way. Make those, tailor those edges there. And now want to put the tear tape on the back of that. Or you can use mini glue dots. Use mini glue dots, you want to use 2. That way you know for sure your ribbon is not going to come off. And it's just going to go just like that. Since I'm using wet glue, I can go ahead and mount the ribbon to this. See? Now we can go ahead and mount this onto the card base. And this one I'm going to do dead center. I did one on the left. I did one on the right. I'm going to do this one dead center. And then we'll mount this. And then we'll just bring this right down there above the bow. So that way you're not covering up the flowers there. And this one you could use the rhinestone jewels. Or sequins. But since I brought the brass butterflies, that's what we're going to use. And this one I'm just going to put the wet glue here. Mount it right below the flowers. Center it. Make sure I got it straight. There we go. And then we'll bring these in. Put a butterfly here. One up there by the flower. Put a big one over here coming in. There's that. And so there is number 3. So, you bring these all back in the picture here. There's number 2. And there's number 1. Aren't those beautiful? And very easy to do for anybody to create those cards. Thank you, Linda. So, don't know what I'm going to do next week, but I'll show you something fun. But I appreciate you joining in. Be sure to share with your friends because these are easy cards for them to create. And if there's any supplies that you need, make sure you reach out to your personal demonstrator. Thank you. Have a wonderful week and stay cool. Thank you, Bea. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Nancy, for joining in. Bye-bye.